All right, yeah, so today we're going to be covering CRUD. Again, this is the acronym we've been talking about often, the ability to create, retrieve, update, and delete data within a Django app. So we're going to actually just go through this page and kind of go through the example that they have here. So in this case, we're going to be creating a library project and then an app called Books. So let's actually kind of follow this process. So I'm going to go to my coding window and run all these steps. And the goal here is to simply create a virtual environment, get into that virtual environment, create a project, and create an app. All right, so let's actually do that quickly. Again, we just did this, but again, more practice. So first thing I want to do is do Python manage DNV, and let's call this virtual. Let's do its thing. All right, source virtual, then activate. All right, so now this should activate my virtual environment. That looks good. Let's do pip install Django. Taking its good old time. Come on, Django. Looks like Django installation has gone out to lunch. I'm sure I have internet. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. My internet seems to be out for some reason, so Zoom seems to be working. All right.
Yeah, we can see your screen and everything and hear you, so that part's good.
Gotcha. I think mine's just going to blip. All right, so that installed, and then I want to do psychopg. Don't forget that. Psychopg2. All right, we're good to go. So I'm going to kind of zoom over the steps because we kind of did them already. But again, if you guys have any unfamiliarity, can't speak, with the steps, definitely ask. So I have Django installed, Psychops installed. Let's create our Django project. So I'm going to do Django admin. Start project, and this can be called library. I'm going to put that period so it's not going to have nested folders. All right, cool. Then I want to do Python manage.py start app. I'm going to call this app books, I believe, right? Yep, I want to call it books, so start app books. That should create a books folder. All right, we're good to go here. So our library is our project, and our books is our app. So let's do the default things that we need to do. So I'm going to go to my settings.py for my installed apps. Let's make this a little smaller. I got to add books. I'm going to add books here. Step 1 is done. Step 2 is the database part. So in that case, I want to use Postgres. So I'm going to do PostgreSQL, and then database name. So let's say this would be library DB. Hopefully I don't have that database ready. I actually got to create that database. So create DB library underscore DB. All right, cool. All right, so again, this name has to match what I just created. All right, that looks good. All right, what else can you do? All right, we did this, create our database. Let's actually start copying some code. So they have some code written out for us. I'm going to copy this for my models. So let's go to models. All right, so we have a simple book model that has title and number of pages the book will have. Nothing too fancy. They have an str method for us. That's kind of convenient. All right, I'm going to scroll. Let's see. So I copied this portion. Let's make our migrations. That's what they're telling us to do. Let's do it. So clear that. Do Python manage py make migrations. And then we want to do the app name. So that's going to be books. Cool. That seemed to go well. Let's migrate. All right, that seems to be done also. All right, so now that our database has all the data it needs right now, obviously we've not added any values for our book model, but that's okay, we can do that later. So our model seems to be good. Let's scroll down further on a page. All right, we need some URLs. So I'm going to copy this. Again, make sure you understand what's being copied. So in this case, we have URL patterns, and this has all the, I guess, the URL strings that I might encounter. So we have a blank path, which goes to our book list. If we have an integer appended to our URL, that's going to be our book view. If we go to /new, that should get us to a page to create a new book. We can also edit and delete. So again, the CRUD operations kind of all encompassed there. Copy this. All right, so I actually got to create a new file in my app called urls.py. And there we go. All right, so that looks like we copied that well. Then we have some, all right, we got to add this to our project URLs. Again, that's the link here. So let's delete all this. Sure. All right, so we have admin and books. Again, we'll talk about the admin if we have time. That is a handy panel to use. Then we have books, goes to books URL, so that looks good. Back to our URL, we have app name here. All right, everything looks to be correct. All right, then we have our views, which has a lot of logic in it. So I'm going to copy all this. And copy that. Go to our views, paste. All right, so just again, a lot of copy and pasting from our curriculum page. So hopefully you guys are able to follow along. But there's a couple of things I'm going to do in between here. So we have something called book form. I'm actually not going to use that right now. And I just want to kind of compare using this versus not using it. And you guys can make your own decisions from that. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to name that forms.py. And I'm going to move this stuff into there. So my new forms.py will contain, we're going to import something called model form. Again, we'll talk about this shortly, but I just want to kind of get that out of my views. And then back to my views. We'll import it still though, so that we don't make complaints. Actually, that's good. All right. So I'm going to modify this code that I have here. I don't want to use book form, so I'm going to get rid of this line. And get rid of this. All right, so let's actually look at the code that they gave us. So we have a helper method called getBook_by_bookID. So it's just going to run this query and get us the ID back, or sorry, get us the book object back based on the ID. So this is just a helper method. Let's comment that, helper method. Then we actually have our route. Functions, I guess, is the correct terminology. Okay, so we have book lists. So again, this is, if you remember posts and comments, it's just like a detailed, not detailed list, sorry, just a summary page with all of our books listed. So again, we're going to call objects.all on the book model. We're going to create a data dictionary and then pass that data dictionary to our template file. So that's something we still need to do. We don't have these template files created. So I believe that's on the curriculum page also. So if I scroll down, yep. So we're just going to copy and paste all this. So shouldn't take too much time since they have this code, but want to make sure that what they have seems correct. In this case, it seems like they have a table here, and they're putting the details inside a table. All right, so let's actually copy this. So again, notice that this is not a full HTML page. There's no HTML tags here. So be wary of that. You can't just paste this in and expect it to work. It's going to be nested inside an HTML page. So let's create our our templates folder. File. I want our templates folder. All right, always remember, again, I will say this again because it's easy to forget, you need a nested folder in there with the app name. So this has got to be called books because books is my app. The books, inside my app folder, I have a templates folder. Inside that templates folder, I have another folder called books. All right, so within that, I'm going to create my template files. So this one was called, what's it called? book list. So let's do book list.html. All right, we got that. I'm gonna do my snippet. This is the base HTML and paste that code that I copied from the script. All right, so let's take a look at this. Apparently border is probably deprecated. Usually we don't use tables, so I think table is kind of the old way to show data on HTML pages. Still works, but it's kind of not really attractive to look at. There are better ways. Again, you can use grid for CSS layouts or a few other ways to present your data. But we'll just go with what they have. So again, they have a table with headers, so title, pages, view, edit, delete. We'll see what those do. And then they have a for loop, goes over all books and lists the content and also give us some links. So we'll see how this renders. Okay. Go back to my views. Let me comment this out so I don't get any complaints. Comments. That looks fine. All right, so I'm commenting out my create and update pages because that's using the form that I don't want to use right now. I will insert that back shortly, I promise. All right, HTTP response, and we're just going to respond with okay, so those are currently commented out. So I just want to look at the book list page. All right, so let's actually save that. I think we should be able to run this. We did all of our steps. We went to our project URLs, added the entry for our app, and then we created a URLs file in our app. We copied this from our curriculum page, which has all the routes, and then we have our views that gives definitions to those routes. All right, so assuming that I've done everything correctly, let's try to run our server. So we're going to do Python manage.py, run server. Okay, no errors here, so it seems like my server is up and running. Let's actually go back to our web page. And so our URL was looking for books, and we get an error. Book is not defined.
I think you moved it to your forms.py, but you still need the from books.models import book.
Absolutely. Good catch. All right, there we go. So this is our table. Currently there's no entries in there. And then we have this new button. So let's click on that, see what happens. Yep, that's our response that we're returning right now. So nothing too exciting going on here because we don't have any data to show and we don't really have anything for new we can do right now. Let's add some data. So create a new file. I call it seeds.py. And then in that, let's import our models. So from books.models, import book. And then let's create some books. So B1 equals book, title equals green, eggs, and ham. And pages. So anyone know how many pages that has? Let's say, I'm going to guess 54. Probably too many. How many pages does green eggs have? Does Google know? 72. Actually, okay. I thought it'd be shorter than that. All right, 72. Let's be accurate then. Pages equals 72. All right, so that's one book. Let's save that. And we'll create one more. So let's do P2 equals book. Does anyone have a favorite book they want to recommend? I'm not much of a reader.
Twilight.
Where the Sidewalk Ends.
All right, I heard Twilight. I heard Where the Sidewalk. How do I spell Twilight like that? Is that right? Whatever. Does anyone know how many pages?
Silverstein.
how many pages Twilight has? Let's just say 500.
Too many.
Probably long. And then B2, save. And then where the sidewalk ends, create poetry book. I'm reading that, having some laughs in school. So where the subject block. Okay, and let's take a guess at that. Pages equals, I think it was in the hundreds, so let's say 143 is my guess. If I'm right, I'm right.
309.
There's a hefty book. That was pretty close for Twilight. 498, not 555. Was it 309?
That was 309.
All right, thanks for looking it up. All right, great. We have accurate information. Always great to have that. All right, let's save these books. And then I actually want to run this file. So bring up a new bash window. We'll do Python manage.py. I'm going to do shell and then feed it my seeds. .hi. All right, hopefully I have no errors there. Python, that is Python. Cool, that seemed to run. Let's actually refresh my page, see if we see the data. Well, there we go. So we have our title, we have pages, and then we have these links. So again, this is just what we copied from the curriculum page. So they provided us links for viewing, editing, and deleting. So I've currently commented out the new and edit because I wanted to show some things there, but we should be able to view. So let's actually click on view, and we get an error. I know why we got an error, because we did not create that template. So let's actually go back to our curriculum page. Curriculum, what do we need? We need to add a book detail template, right? So let me copy this, go here. I'm gonna do these quickly. Hopefully you guys can keep pace. It was book_detail.html. All right, cool. Gonna do my base. Oops, that's not what I want. Base HTML. Paste this in here. Yeah, okay, that looks good to me. Save that. Now will it work? There we go. That was quick. Nice to have code written for us, but we get our details. So we have our title. Not the best format, so this is where CSS will come into play. I'm not going to bother with CSS, but always nice to make your pages look pretty when you have time. So back button, we'll go back here. All right, cool. We can actually view the details. That seems to be working very well. But again, we want that CRUD functionality. So we want to be able to add new items without going to a database and writing SQL or Django items. Also want to be able to edit something. So let's actually talk about forms in HTML. So let's go back to our page here. We have a book form. So let's create a new page. book_form.html. Create our base HTML and paste in that code. However, I don't want to use what they gave me. Comment that out. I'm going to write my own form here. So I'll copy some of what they gave me. Yes. So our form method is going to be post. That's usually a default for posting. Don't forget your CSRF tokens. Again, easy to forget that. I've forgotten many times. If you try to run it, you'll see a CSRF error, and that just signifies you got to have that token. Again, this prevents like other people from spamming your server if they had access to your machine. All right, I don't want to do this. Let's create our own form. So we're going to have a label, let's say. This would be, we have title for a book. And then we're going to have another label. What was it? Pages. All right, so those are our labels. We need input fields. So with input type equals text and name equals title. That's enough for that. Paste that. Again, let me know if you have any questions about what I'm doing. Right now, I'm just creating my own form in HTML. So it's going to be text, and name will be pages. Okie dokie. I'm probably going to need some break lines here because the way these elements work, they don't break for me. All right, let me save that. Book detail, book form. Okay, so I have my book form template that is currently static. I'm not taking in any data, but let's go back to our views. All right, so I commented out book create, so let me reinsert that, but I'm going to modify that. So let's keep that commented code, and I'll do this myself. So I'm going to do return render. I guess I want this line down here. Copy that. It's up there. All right, so it's going to call my book form. I'm not going to pass it a form right now. New or edit, sure. Let's pass another value. So actually, all right, new or edit is just a text field. So that's why we can use the same form for editing and updating. So let's go back to too many tabs open. Book form. We'll add a title up here. So let's say, what is it right here? Sure. All right, so it's going to say book form, new or edit based on if we're actually adding a new item or editing. All right, I think that should be good to go. Let's verify our views, render request. Yep, that looks fine to me. Let's try it out. So I'm going to click on new. There we go. This is our not so great looking form. Looks like I missed the comment closing tag somewhere. There we go. All right, so I have this form. I could add in like a new book, like let's say the dictionary is technically a book. Pages, I don't know, a lot of pages. 699 pages maybe. I can hit submit, but that submit's probably not gonna be processed. Yep, so I hit submit, but nothing really happened. Like if I go back to my homepage, nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? Because this data needs to actually be processed. We're not actually doing anything with that data. When we hit submit, it takes the data and kind of goes into the ether, and that data is kind of just lost. So let's actually handle this data ourselves. So I'm going to go back to my views. All right, so our create can actually do two things. If it's a get request, so remember get is just requesting data for reading a page, we want to show that form. However, if we get a post, we want to do something different. So post is the method that's submitted when you hit the submit button on a form. So let's actually figure out how to do that. So in this case, we will actually use our request and check if post exists on it. I'm going to do if request.post. If that is something, then we want to proceed to use it. So this is going to signify that a post request was used instead of a get. So we do this. Let's actually get data from this. So in this case, I might do, let's create a book object. So book empty has no values in it. Book.title will equal. So this is where you can actually extract data out of this post. And if you actually want to see that data, we could try debugging this in VS Code. That is possible through Django. So we'll do request.post. And then this is going to have a bunch of data in it. So in this case, I'm going to enter title here. The reason I can put title here is because if I go back to my book form, that's the name value that I gave to my form input. If I name this whatever, then I would have to reference that my views. I would say whatever here. All right, and then my book.pages was request post, and I think I gave it the name pages, but I'm not sure. Form. Yep, pages is the name, so I can extract pages like such, and that should get the correct values. This is where it would make sense to call something like book.fullClean, because again, let's say they didn't enter a pages value, you might want to verify that and say, hey, you got to actually enter a number, or maybe enter a negative number, which wouldn't make sense for pages. So this is where, again, validation would make sense. I'm not going to go through that motion because we want to talk about creating and updating data and not validations. That was a couple days ago. But again, just for your real projects, definitely validate your data because you can't trust your user to put in valid values all the time. All right, so I'll call it full clean. That's not going to hurt because I don't think I have any validation that would be hit. And then I'll do this. Keep in mind from your validation knowledge, full clean can throw an exception. So it is wise to put a try around all this. I mean, I might just need it around full clean, but I'll just do it around this whole thing in case one of these can throw an exception. Like, if this value doesn't exist, that might throw an exception. I'm not sure. Always good to protect yourself with some tries. All right, if we get an exception, we'll just, what do we want to do? Let's just return some message. Okay, so again, we're extracting data values. We're going to validate it, which in this case, no real validation is happening, and then we save it. All right, so this is actually how we create an object. We took the user input, and then we store it to our database. So that is our C part of CRUD, which is creating data. Let's actually test this out. Quite possible that I made an error. We also want to return here because we don't want to do the GET request. So this is the GET request. This is the POST request. So in this case, let's return something. It might be sensible to return them back to the POST list, right? So let me figure that out. All right, so this is where we can use something called redirects, which is over here. And I think they do that for us here. Copy that. All right, so once they save something, we're going to redirect them to this route. So again, this is our app name, and then this is the route name that we gave in URL. So book list is the name of that route. So that's how we're using the redirect here. Kind of handy to use that. All right. So if that all goes well, we'll be redirected to the book page, else we'll get a HTTP response. Let me save that. All right, let's go back to our form, refresh for good measure. All right, what's a good book out there? Dictionary, great book. Pages, I don't know, 688. All right, let's hit submit and see what happens. Fingers crossed. All right, that was pretty easy. So we got navigated, redirected back to our title page or our landing page. We got dictionary added here, as you can see. Pages look correct, and then we could view it. All right, these are the details for dictionary. Back. All right, so new works. Again, we had a new book, but we already did that. Let's think about edit. So this is where, again, editing and creating a new object are pretty similar. We're adding or modifying values, so we could use the same form, but there's going to be something added there. So like if we go to edit as is, so let me. If we did the same thing that we did in adding a new item, we're gonna be okay in the sense that it's gonna add a new item, but we want to actually modify an existing item. So that's where we will do something slightly different. So I'm gonna copy this. Probably would want to create a function for this because it's pretty similar to what I'm doing in editing and creating new. But for now, I'm just gonna keep it separate. So we don't actually want to create a new book object, right? We have something that exists. So this is where we can use the book ID. But the book ID needs to be passed to us. How does it get passed to us? Let's look at our route mapping. So we have edit, and that edit has a book ID as a parameter. So when we go to edit /2, that should edit book number 2, and we'll get past that ID from the URL. All right, so for editing, we have a book ID for new. Obviously, we have no ID that we know about or care about because it's a brand new item. So in this case, we're going to get an ID. So let's go to our views. Let's get rid of our terminal for now. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. If we posted something, we want to get that ID. So in this case, I'll do book.objects. Now I'll do get. And then we'll do the same thing we did before, pk equals book ID. Again, that could fail, so that's why we have a try except. Title will be the same. This is whatever, pages, validate, and save. So this essentially is the same thing also. We're going to render something. All right, but our get request is a little different. So our get request, in this case, is going to have edit, but that's not all we need. So let's actually try running this and see what happens. I'm gonna go back. All right, let's edit our dictionary book that we added. Okay, so notice we got to the form. It just says edit instead of add, so it looks like it's working correctly. But like this isn't really user friendly, right? Like I should have these fields pre-populated because I already have a value for title and pages. Oops. I already have a value for title and pages, so I should probably pre-populate that for the user. It just makes sense, since they're changing a value potentially. So how do I actually get values into here is the question. Well, we have an ID already when we go into the get requests. We can use that. So I'm actually going to pull this out and put it over here. Might still want to try catch or try accept around it because it could fail for us. So let's do that. And if they give us an error, we'll give the same response. We're not going to be really descriptive with our errors. All right, so we're going to get a book object. If we're posting, and this is when we're submitting, we're going to save it. Again, this book object is the one that already exists in our database. Likewise, we're going to want to pass some data to our page. So I'm going to call that book. And sorry that my tooltips are taking up some space. And that will be our book object.
You
Right?
can't just add that to the existing dictionary.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Thank you. Yep, so we have an entry for this, and then we have another data member in our dictionary that we're passing to our page. So now we can actually use that book object within our template. So let's go back to our form. So currently our form is just using that new or edit parameter, but we want to use, if we do pass a book to our form, that means we're editing. We want to actually use the values from that book. If we don't pass a book object, that means we're creating a new object, and then we could just have our default whatevers. So let's see. We're going to need an if statement here. So that's the way to do this. Let's try it this way. So I'm going to try nesting something in here. Value equals, might be kind of messy to do in here. I could probably break this off into a separate if statement, but I'm going to do value equals book dot title if book else empty. I'm not quite sure if this will work. So this is a ternary statement saying if book is valid, insert book title into the value, else if book is not valid, insert empty string. Not quite sure if this will do what I want, but always worth trying.
Are you trying to do a default value?
Wouldn't this pre-populate the value in there?
I think so, and then I think default value would, like, once you click it, it'll just disappear.
Gotcha. I think that's placeholder. Default value might also be that.
That's
but,
placeholder.
Placeholder.
yeah. So in that case, I don't think I'd want to use placeholder because I want to actually have that value in there, not replaced. Like I would do placeholder equals title. So this is what the user will see to get prompted with the enter. So if you guys aren't familiar with placeholder, it's just a UI user-friendly thing to add for users. You probably see this, in many forms that you fill out. All right, so book.pictures. Let's see if this works. I'm not sure if it will. That's kind of the fun of development. Okay, so I've added this. That's what I want. Let's give it a try. I'm curious. All right, let's go back. All right, dictionary, let's hit edit. Encountered an error. That's not good. Unfortunately, my error statements are not helpful. Form, book edit. Edit. All right, so it's failing.
Question, Encore. For those in your HTML, since we're using a ternary, do you still need to do like the start if and then end if?
I don't think so, but then again, I'm not sure if ternaries are kosher here. So let me just do it maybe a little less elegant way, just so we get this working. And then we could refine our code later if we need to. So I'm just going to copy all of this. Again, it's not going to be pretty. I'm saying that up front. We do. I guess I might need my percentage signs there, but I'll just go this way. So if book, do this, else, and then copy this, put that there. Value equals what I want it to equal. All right, so this was book.title in quotation marks, of course. And then this was value equals, what's this? Book dot pages. Okay, let's give this a try. Fingers crossed, as always. All right, so I have my if here. I need an end if. Percent end if. All right, so this block will be for my new case, or for my edit case. I reversed that, didn't I? Shame on me. All right, so
You
the first,
also spelled if wrong in your end if statement.
thank you. All right, so if I have a book object, I'm gonna actually print out those values and insert the existing values, else I'll have no values. So that's what I was trying to do with the ternaries, but I think I had that formatted incorrectly. All right, so, all right, let's give this a try. If book, the book is the data that I'm passing in. Let's go back, refresh. All right, there it goes. So I have dictionary pre-populated here. So if I want to change the name to like dictionary of donuts, I could. Pages, let's say there's only 7 pages in that sort of dictionary. So if I hit submit, let's see what happens. All right, there we go. We see an update. So it was our existing value. We took it in with an edit. We passed that existing object to our HTML page, so it had the correct values. So in this case, dictionary of donuts and 7. When we hit submit, the submit is going to actually update the existing value, not create a new one. And that's all based on which route handler is handling this form. So we have the same form for new or edit. But when we hit submit, our URL is different. So in this case, we're at edit/4 because we're actually editing something. Versus if we go to new, notice that the URL is different, even though it's using the same form template. Right, and these are our placeholders that that tag we added, or the attribute we added for our input tag. So it just kind of prompts the user. If we start typing, it replaces it. All right, so that achieved our U part of CRUD, which is updating. So we've done C, we've done R, which is reading or retrieving. We didn't updating. So the last thing we need to do is that delete part. I think we have that coded in. So let's look at our curriculum page. We got to create a delete page, which is ask to confirm it. I'm going to copy that and quickly create it. Book delete, I believe was the name, HTML. There we go. Paste, HTML, and paste. All right, so this is another form. It has a CSR token. And then simply we're just asking the user, hey, are you sure you want to actually delete that object? So object is the, variable we pass in, that book. We could look at our views and go to the code that we had. Yep, book delete passes in object instead of book. Again, you can name it whatever you want. Good to be consistent, but in this case, we'll go with their code. I named it book up here. It's object down here. Either way, you can access it. Okay, so let's actually try deleting something. So refresh.
I think the HTML file needs to be called book confirmed _confirm _ delete.
Yes, nothing gets by you guys. Thank you. You guys are saving me some headaches later. Confirm delete. Thank you for those suggestions, or I guess extra eyes. All right, confirm delete looks like, yep. Thank you. Save that. Let's go delete this dictionary of donuts. Let's go delete. Okay. Book delete. Are you sure you want to delete it? So it's going to be a submit button. Let's hit that. All right. There we go. We got redirected back to our title page, and we're gone. So again, we did a lot of copy and pasting from the curriculum page. Always make sure you understand that code. So kind of went quick through this because we just want to show you the ability to kind of, again, list. So read or retrieve. Then I guess view would also be a read. Edit is updating. New would be the creation part of CRUD. And then finally, having the ability to delete. So these are the 4 basic operations you'd see pretty much on any website. Whether you think about Gmail or Amazon or whatever website you think of that has data that's showing you. This is your core functionality. All right, so let's take a quick break. I don't want to go without breaks. So let's take a 5-minute. Let's take a 6-minute break. No, not 6. Sorry, 9-minute break. Let's get back at 3:05, and we'll kind of wrap up using Django forms, which I definitely want to show you guys. All right, guys. So we've seen our CRUD capabilities here, where we can add, update, read, and I guess delete. I did that out of order. Create, read, update, and delete data for CRUD. All right, so that works well. The thing that I wanted to kind of introduce now is the idea of, or the concept, not even concept, the ability to use Django forms. So one thing I want to go over. Let me close all my tabs. I have too many open. Let's keep this one open. Close all. Close all. All right, so let's go back to my models. All right, so again, our book model isn't too interesting, right? We have a title and pages. One thing I could totally think of that would be sensible would be an author, right? So I'm actually gonna add a new field to my model. So as we know, this is gonna entail some process here. So I'm gonna do char field, max length. Let's give that, I don't know, 64. That's usually what I stick to. All right, added a new author. Let me query the audience. I don't know why this is popping up over here. All right, who do I have? Jacob, I hadn't talked to you today. Jacob, I added a new item to my model. What's something I'm gonna have to do now?
You just added author.
Yep.
Okay, let's do a class author.
Well, so in this case, I'm just gonna have it a string. Good thinking though. Yeah, if this were like a true model, I'd probably want an author object. But in this case, I'm just gonna have a name for an author. So I'm not gonna add any classes.
Okay.
So I've updated my model. What's something that's gonna be required of me, or I'll get into some trouble later?
I think a save method.
Not quite. So yeah, I guess if you mean by save, we gotta update our database. I'd say that's correct. So we updated our model. So we gotta tell our database that our model changed, right?
What about a related name and an on delete cascade?
So again, that would be for a foreign key. So I think what you're thinking of is like, let's say I added a class of author, which again, totally would make sense if we want to make this more detailed. So if I did like a class author and then had like a name for the author, yada, yada, yada. Then I would have a foreign key here that would point to the author method. So again, I like the way you're thinking because this is probably the better way to do it if we're creating a real application. Like we'd have a foreign key and then we'll do a, on delete, on delete, and then yeah, do that cascade thing. So I think this is what you're thinking of, which again, I like that you're thinking that way. But in this case, I don't want to have an extra class. I just want to be kind of lazy and just use a string here. So I created a string field or a char field, max length was 64, I believe. So anytime you update your model, you gotta let your database know about it. So that's where we do the make migrations. So I'm gonna do Python manage.py, make migrations, and then give my app name of books. So again, since this is in my app, I updated the models for books. It's gonna ask me this question, again, you guys might see this often. Basically, we have an existing table that has data in it. Now we're adding a new field. So this prompt is asking me, hey, for the records that are already in that database table, how do we add this new column? Like it needs to know what value to put into that column. So our two options are provide a one-off default. For example, our author, we could just say it's gonna be blank, or we could say author is just like, Dr. Seuss, but that's not true for all the books in our database. Or we can abort this operation and then do that through our model. So I guess let's actually do it through our model. So I'm gonna quit here, and then let's add a default here. So default, in this case, will be a blank string, or we could add something that says no author. All right, so two ways to go about it. We could have Django automatically put in a default value for us, or we could be more specific in our code and say, all right, this has a default value, so let's try making migrations again. Make migrations. All right, that seemed to work now, because again, it knows what default we want, and so it's able to apply that when we migrate to the changes to our database. So now that we made migrations, we got to migrate. All right, cool. Everything seems to work well.
So then at that point, when we call that book.author, we'll overwrite the no author.
When you call it, what do you mean by
call? Or I mean, when you're trying to put an author in there.
Yeah, so
we'll overwrite the default no author.
Yes. So currently, if you remember, we had these books in here. So all of these books didn't even know the concept of an author field because we never had that. Now their author field is going to be in strings, angle brackets, no author. So that's the default we specified. But yeah, so actually, I got a few more steps to do here, but we'll get to that. So now that I've added that to my model and upgraded my database, my data, like my backend side is good, but now my front end needs a little bit of work, right? Because if I look at my detail page, right, we're only showing pages and the title. We're not really, we can't like dynamically show like new field we added, right? Like we added an author field. So now we got to update all of our templates potentially. Like again, we only have 4 templates here. Let's say we had 40. Might be kind of cumbersome to kind of go through all of those, especially just for one field. And if we need to do that again, we got to keep doing this. So let me actually add this here. So let's make this an H3. Using a lot of headers here. Will be author book dot author. So again, now that we're adding this in here, the value, the default value will be shown here, unless we actually go into the
Cool there.
Thank you. All right, so now we've added this. So our detail page should be good. Let's see, our list page. Now we need another column here. So let's do it. Again, this is tedious, and there's maybe a better way we can do this. Put that under title. Author. Okay.
I'm a little bit confused. Why does author have a not null constraint, but book and title, I believe, are the other ones that don't? Why did it make you put in a default only for that one?
Good question. So that's again because since we already had an existing schema, which was title and pages for our book table, we already have records potentially in there. So when we add a new field, the records already exist, and that the database needs to know what to put into that new field that we're adding. So our title and pages was already pre-populated in our original schema. So that's why those work fine. Because when we created our schema initially, we defined our tables for our book table or book model. I don't know if I
Thank you.
Yeah, the fact that we're adding a new column and then we have existing data, it needs to know for those existing data items, what goes in that new column. Like anything new we add now, it's going to have the author value already because that's new data, but the existing data needs something for that field. So we got to specify something for it. All right, so I added an author there. Let me just quickly add it here. Don't want to spend too much time doing this. Book.pages, book.author. All right, so that's our list page. We did our detail page. We also got to update our form, right? Because now we have a new field. So we do a quick copy and paste. Again, definitely a bit tedious, especially if I want to add another field after this. I'm going to have to do this all over again. Author. Probably could do a find and replace to make that life a little easier, but we'll just go with this. Copy this, go to my if statement, go for here, author, no value. Okay, so now I think I've got all the places I wanted to, but I could have easily missed a place. Like that's kind of the downside of kind of doing this manually. But let me save this. Let's do our refresh here. Okay, so we got author. Notice we have no author list here because that's our default value for our existing items. Let's actually view this. All right, no author, that's kind of what we expect. Let's edit this. Let's edit where the sidewalk ends. So we have no author as our default value, but we know the author here was what, Shel Silverstein. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Great author there. Sorry, I keep hitting Control S. All right, so we have that author. Let's hit submit. Okay, that did not update. Why didn't that update? Can anyone kind of figure out why? Answer is because we're not processing it correctly. So if we go back to our views, remember where we did this? Like we extract the title value and the page values. We got to do that for our author also. So definitely messed this up here. Author. And then we got to do that for our edit. Again, I've not structured this properly, as in I have duplicate code. I probably should centralize this, but in the interest of time, I am going to forego proper etiquette or proper best practices. All right, now we actually grab the value from the form.
Ankur?
Yep.
I'm sorry, what's the commented out code you have in those functions, yeah, what was it?
This is the code that I copied from the curriculum. So they provided us with some code, and I commented this out because I'm not using the form object from Django. Yeah, so this is the whole reason I wanted to do it manually, kind of show how tedious it can be. But I'll uncomment this out, but that came from the curriculum page. So it was, where was it? Oh, it was these methods right here. So I commented out the update and create.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll insert it shortly.
I think you still have one of them set as book.page
Pages.
author. Yeah.
You guys, I can't get anything past you guys. Thank you. Okay, so now that we're actually grabbing the value, again, this name comes from the HTML element that I've named author, or I can name it whatever, like properly, usually want to name it properly, so whatever is not descriptive, but we'll go with it. All right, so now that I actually have that, I save that, refresh. Let's go edit for sidewalk names again. All right, so this was Shell with 1L, Silverstein, I think that's correct. Let's hit submit. There we go. We got an author here. Again, our formatting isn't the greatest. These columns are kind of merging with each other, but we did successfully add that in. Let's try a new book. So let's do, can someone give me a book? I'm not a reader. Any readers out there?
Checker's Guide to the Galaxy.
All right. Hitchhiker's Guide. Is it to the Galaxy or through the Galaxy?
To the Galaxy.
Author, I already know the author.
Douglas Adams.
Douglas, thank you for that. And then pages, I'm gonna guess, let's assume it has 740. Did I overshoot? You can let me know.
224.
Okay, thank you. That was way off. All right, I'm gonna submit that. All right, cool. Author got saved. So it looks like the new field we added, we added it to our model, migrated the changes to our database. Then we had to go through all of our HTML pages, make sure we show the data correctly. And then we also had to update our routes that process our form so that we actually grab the value and save it into to the database that way. So again, a lot of steps there. But there, I would think there's a better way, and actually there is through Django. So this is where we get to actually using forms. So this is where we get back to our curriculum and using the code they showed us. So let's actually talk about that. All right, so if you remember, I created a forms.py file earlier and then moved my book form into that. Let's actually take a look at the structure of this. There's not too much here, but we get an import from Django forms, something called model form. And then you want to inherit from model form and name your class whatever you want. Usually you want to use the model that you're going to be using. So in this case, this form is from my book model, hence the name of this is book form. Nothing too creative there. Inside of that class, we have a nested class called meta. This class has to be called meta. This is something that Django relies on. So don't mess with this and say whatever, or don't rename it. You got to use meta. So this name is fixed. So this name you give it here is whatever you want it to be, and then you have to derive from model form. All right. Likewise, I'm importing my book model, and then notice these two lines here. Again, model and fields must be named. These attributes must be named model and field. You don't have the liberty to name it where you want. So again, this is Django using something that's going to automatically create forms for us and data for us. So it needs to find a model and fields attribute. All right, so don't get creative and try to change these values for your own use. Model, and it's going to point to book. So it's going to say this form is going to use the book as this model. And then field specifies what fields you actually want to expose to the user. So usually you want to expose all the fields, but sometimes you might have a protected field in your model. Like, for example, I don't know, maybe you have like a social security number that you don't want to expose, like you don't want someone editing that social security number because it should be fixed. Then you might not put it in your field fields. In this case, I added author, so I'm going to add author here. Author, pages. All right, so all I had to do was add author here, and then let's actually update my views. So now I'm actually going to use that form. So let's get that form in here. So from books.forms, import book form. And then I'm going to uncomment that code that I think Christian was asking about. So again, here's my code manually doing it. Let's comment that out. And then let's uncomment the code that was provided to us, again, from the curriculum page. And let me do the same down here. Uncomment and comment this. Sorry. Shift and copy. All right, so let's actually take a look at this code and make sure we understand it, because we copied it. In this case, we're calling the book form. We're creating a book form instance, and either if post is valid, we're going to pass in the post data or pass in nothing. So this is going to initialize our book form and pass back a form instance. Next, we're going to see if that form is valid, and then if it is, we're going to save it. So isValid is a form method that's probably gonna do some validation. Again, this might check for blank fields or like invalid input. We can kind of test that if we need to. But otherwise, we're gonna just save our form, and this will save the book instance to our database. And we call it form.save. And then finally we'll redirect. So this is similar to what we were doing before, but notice we don't have to specify each of the fields here. That was done in one place in our forms. We just have to specify what fields we care about in our book form. And then if we go to our views, we don't have to specify those at all. It's kind of behind the scenes, the form is taking care of it. So in this case, all right, I'm actually going to change this because I don't like the way they do it, but that's just me. So book form, and then if request dot post. Do this. All right, same thing as before. I just prefer to have a clear if statement that says it posts here. So if we're posting, which means we're submitting a form, create a book form object, and then, sorry, we need to pass that post in there then. All right, so this is going to take the post data and kind of automatically populate the correct fields. So again, this is kind of very convenient. We don't have to do much. We just got to pass it the dictionary of posts, and that form will be properly populated with the values.
Question for you. On line 26, the form.save, you said it saves the form instance to the database. Do you mean it saves the data from the form into the database?
Yeah, it's going to store the book instance, not the form itself. So when you call save on the form, it's going to actually save the book object to the database, not the form itself. The one key thing here is your naming for your fields does matter at this point. Because again, it's going to use posts and automatically get the values. But that magic is because the naming has to be consistent. So I can't actually use whatever for my values in my form. So I'm actually going to correct that because that's not proper naming anyway. So this should be title. So this name should match what your form field is. In this case, sorry, these values are from your model. So notice this is title, author, pages. You want to use those names consistently in every place. So I was in my form, title, I don't want to use whatever that is not correct description and not proper naming anyway. All right, so I changed that to title. Go back to my views. All right, so now this post will have a bunch of data in it. There'll be key value mapping. So the key will be name of the field, and then the value will be the actual value of the field. All right, so let's actually give this a try. Let me do this for my edit also. Okay, in this case, for our edit case, I think I overwrote it. We want to pass in an instance. So get book ID is that helper method that we had. So I guess I didn't have to do it manually down here. This is just going to run this query. Where did it go? Yep, we're just calling book objects.get. All right, that gives us our book. Then we pass in that as our instance. So let me just model this as I had before. If request.post. Okay. That's not what I want. All right, if post, do this.
You're missing a colon after post.
Indeed. All right, so in this case, we want the book if we're doing a get or a post. For the get case, we pass in the form here. So sorry, move this aside. All right, let me undo my changes. I think I'm screwing up code. All right, so I'm going to go back to what they had. So again, we create a form, but we got to pass in an instance. This is, again, the update case where we have something we want to update. So passing in instance equals, we'll pass in this object, and then it'll use that object to pre-populate our fields. And then when we're saving, it's going to actually update that instance rather than create a new object. So when we hit save, it's going to update the existing book instance versus when we did save for a new object, it actually created a new book instance and saved that to our database. All right, the key thing here, notice we're passing in form. So we're just taking the form object and passing it to our HTML page. We don't know how to, give it the book object. We just give it the form object. And the reason for that is, we'll see shortly. So I'm going to go back to my form. All right, this, again, they got kind of messy, right? Let me trash this. I had to manually add some input fields, some labels. Creating forms isn't the most fun thing to do in HTML. Definitely not, difficult, but if I actually take all of this out, so let's go here. Let's comment it in case I want it later. All right, instead of that, I could just do something like this. So we could just do form, and as T, I believe. So and I think in the document or the curriculum page, it's as P. Basically, this means as table or as paragraph. I actually prefer table. We can actually see differences, but let's do as P since that's what we have. Basically, we take the form, call as P on it, and that's going to display the data all for us. Again, that's way easier than having to create these fields. And again, if we add a field, we got to go through our pages and edit. This is just going to automatically do that for us. Key thing to remember is you still need to add a button. So this button is not part of your form data. So you guys still add a submit button when you create a form in HTML, but otherwise you could use the form model form that's passed to you and just display that. So let's hit save there. Detail doesn't need to be updated. Confirm doesn't be updated. All right, I think we're good. So let me try saving this and let's see what happens. So we have our books. Let's refresh, let's remeasure. Let's go viewing where the sidewalk ends. All right, sorry, that didn't seem to do anything. Cancel. Form. Use. Form. All right, I need a post here. If request.post. I'm missing. All right, that and invalid syntax. Post. Always those columns. All right, let's see if this works. Oh, I want to go to edit. Sorry, I'm going to the wrong page. All right, so I went to edit, and this is what I get out of it. This is the automatically rendered form. Notice that my pages is like a selector, so I could, or a toggle, so I could kind of toggle the values. This was automatically generated for me. I mean, we're kind of cut off for our title, so we could kind of maybe manipulate that. We have less control in terms of like the width of these fields. But there we go. Like this was automatically created for us. I could prove that by, go back to my field. Let's add a new field. Again, I don't want to take too much time here, but let's add one more field. So what is something that a book has? So we have pages, title, author.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Okay.
Publisher.
I'll go with fiction, nonfiction, because it's Boolean. Fiction or non models that Boolean. Thank you for your suggestions, though. All right, so I'm going to add that. So still got to update my migrations or create my migrations. So let's do that quickly. I lost my server. All right, so Python manage.py, and we want to make migrations for books. All right, it's giving me the same thing as before. Let's actually do 1 and do false. All right, that worked. And then let's actually migrate that. Migrate. All right, looks like that worked. Okay, so again, remember the first time where I added authors, I had to go through all these steps and update all these places. However, when using Django forms, the only thing I need to do additional is go to my form and add in that value. So I think it was, what was it called? Fiction or non is what I named it. I'm going to save that. I'm not updating my HTML pages at all. I'm not updating my views at all. I'm going to go back to my page. And of course, my server's not running, so not as easy. So Python manage.py run server. All right, server's up. I was on my page. There we go. Look, we got this nice field. Again, it knows it's a Boolean, so now it's just a checkbox. Again, we didn't have to do anything. Django automatically just knew it's a Boolean field, gives it the proper HTML form type or field type, and we're good to go. So we hit submit. Okay, so our title page does not actually use the form, so we gotta probably update our title page. Sorry, that was not as glorious as I thought it'd be, but let's do fiction. Or non. Anyway, those main thing I want to show is much easier to just use Django forms. Our title page isn't as robust. All right, there we go. Fiction, true, false. But the main thing was the form is what I want to show. So when I go to new, I get an unbound form. Great. Use. What did I do? Update, create. Form. Form here. I guess that's why they're doing this. Or, sorry for the errors, but still, Django form is much easier to use. All right, there we go. And then just to show you, I prefer as T instead of as P. So let's just see what that looks like. So if I change this to as T, again, this is displaying it as a table. It just kind of aligned a little better, and it just goes away. Sorry, guys. I forgot one crucial detail, and that was, where was that? I think we gotta nest it inside of a table. Yeah, let's try that. So table. Save that. And I swear there's an easy way to do this. Let's quickly Google it. Because I prefer it, I just forgot how to do it. So as T Django. Forms. There it is, as table. All right, so maybe I have my terminology or syntax wrong, as table. That's what I want. There we go. All right, sorry. Forgot that you gotta do as table, not as T. I don't know why I assumed that. But okay, now it's kind of like aligned a little better. So I just prefer that as opposed to as P, kind of has weird alignment. Otherwise, you could use whichever you want. And that is Django forms. So again, definitely easier to use Django forms in my opinion. You might have a little less control, but it's a trade-off, right? So using something pre-built versus doing it yourself, it's kind of left up to you if you know what you're trying to achieve. But otherwise, just having this fields parameter, you add the value in there, and then everything else kind of automatically works. I think it's much easier, so I usually will be using forms unless I need to do something special that I can't do with Django forms. All right, that was a lot of material that we just covered. Any lingering questions on Django forms, what we did? Again, a lot of it was on the curriculum page, so just point you back to March 12th. We have all the code kind of written for you. This is using the Django forms already. So I did it the manual way just to show you that it can be done manually and kind of also show you it can be tedious to do it manually. But we've used the built-in Django forms to kind of make our lives a little easier. All right, any questions? Comments, concerns? What questions do you guys have?
Since we're gonna replicate this for practice, should we fork that initial repository and then fork the to-do list, or should we just do this on our local repo?
I mean, yeah, you can just do it on your local repo if you want to do the tutorial. I mean, if you want to put it on GitHub, like go for it. I don't think we have a project to check out, so you just we had to create one. But I mean, always anything you do, put it on GitHub because it's good to have access to it anywhere. But yeah, since you kind of maybe mentioned it, let's take a look at the one assignment that we guys, we don't have much coding time for this afternoon. So if you guys find time during your break to attack this, definitely do it. It shouldn't take too long. We're going to revisit our idea of a to-do list. So if you remember from our HTML and CSS week, we had a nice to-do list page that we created. I think that's a great challenge. So another suggestion, if you've not completed that challenge, maybe do that over break. It's a great way to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript kind of working together. But now we're going to kind of iterate on our to-do list and actually use a database for our backend instead of browser storage. Now, the reason for this is the idea of data persistence. So when we use our local storage in our browser, that generally works. But think about if you clear your browser cache, you're going to lose your to-do list details that you had for the very simple HTML page that we created. Also, if you're on another machine and you want to access your to-do list, well, you can't really do that with the simple CSS, HTML, JavaScript solution that we implemented a week or two ago, because that data is only in your local browser. It's not accessible from anywhere. With databases, we could persist that data, and that means in between sessions or between like different machines, we can still have access to the same data. And so I might create my to-do list on this machine, then maybe I take my laptop somewhere, and then I'm at a park and I need to look at my to-do list. Well, since the data is stored in a database, that can be accessed no matter where I go through the web page. All right, so that's kind of what we're going to have you do here. So it's just another iteration, maybe not iteration, but just another flavor of a to-do list in terms of actually using a database with Django to store your to-do list data, and then kind of using CRUD capabilities. So again, you want to be able to add new to-do items, update them, and then also delete them if you complete them. All right, so create is going to be your release one, then read, update, and destroy, or delete. I guess we have various definitions for the acronym. All right, but yeah, hopefully that shouldn't take you too long. Just give you more practice using Django, and the main lesson from today is the ability to create, update, and delete data. It's something that we've not done yet, but this will let you get good experience for it. All right, with that, I'm going to stop the recording.